Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Cloud Wars Live. The digital revolution's in full swing, and our good friend Bonnie Tinder, the CEO and founder of Raven Intel, is going to be with us today to talk about some ratings or rankings and surveys that have been done from customers and partners about their experiences with SAP applications, Workday applications, and Oracle applications. Bonnie, welcome back to Cloud Wars Live. Great to see you.
Great to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Well, it looks like you and the folks at Raven Intel have cooked up some pretty interesting numbers. Bonnie, tell us about that.
Yeah, well, Bob, after reading a lot of some of the daily news that you've had recently with the comparisons between SAP, Oracle, Workday, some of the trading back and forth of customers, I thought it would be really interesting and relevant, timely topic to talk about the implementations and what we are seeing in terms of success from a customer perspective of each of these different softwares that that you go in depth with, but really look at them from an implementation standpoint and compare all three.
Bonnie, and this is really the sweet spot, right, for what your company Raven Intel does. You have a lot of expertise. You've got your own personal experience in software projects, but the company really digs deeply into these sorts of evaluations, right?
Absolutely. So the company started Raven Intel is a peer review site, meaning that we get our reviews directly from customers. And what we look at specifically is implementation and the project success and the partners who are responsible for that success. And so we look in depth at SAP, Oracle, and Workday, and really any enterprise software that relies on partners to get the product up and running.
Okay. And Bonnie, I'm not much of a data scientist. I don't play one on television or on a podcast even, but I did notice that from some of the demographics you sent around about the companies involved here, it looks like about 77% of the companies who responded or who are involved in the surveys here have between 1,000 and 50,000 employees. So not giant corporations, but pretty big, mid-size and large, and mid-size corporations as well.
For sure. And I think it's a representative sample of the larger customer swag of these organizations. So I think we have a pretty good sample size that represents what their typical customer sizes are.
Okay. So Bonnie, you had a couple different categories. Tell us about those, and then sort of weave your way into it. I want to start the drum roll now, but you've got some table setting to do.
For sure. So let me just take a step back a little bit and tell you about the reviews that we have that I'm doing sort of this analysis on, and so we look at, as I mentioned before, enterprise software implementation projects. And we have in our data set today a little over 1,000 reviews that have come in. What we're looking at, though, is we've called that list down just to SAP, Oracle, and Workday. And so we're looking at about 400 project reviews written by customers in a variety of different areas. And about 75% of these projects were HCM related, or that human capital management. About 25% of them were the full suite. So that's, the S/4HANA, the Oracle Fusion Cloud, the Workday Financials, plus the HCM. So that's the products that we're looking at. Okay. And, the projects that have been completed were ones that were done within the past 24 months. Okay. So very recent information, but to level set, these are cloud projects. We are not looking at, on-premise or legacy projects. These are projects that are moving into the cloud, which is, as you know very well, this is where the market is going. So that is a little bit about sort of the demographics of this. We're looking at every industry, We have over 40 countries that these projects were completed in, and they're very representative of the type of projects that these organizations are doing on a regular basis as well.
Yeah, Bonnie, and I want to just sort of follow up on that because you had mentioned earlier some of the discussion about Oracle and SAP in particular, and that just for if people haven't been caught up on that, last week on March 10th, Oracle had its quarterly earnings call. And one of the things that Larry Ellison chose to do there was he read a list of, it was actually 100 different company names, where he said Oracle has replaced either some or all of the enterprise applications formerly that the customers had been running SAP. So in a way that was quite dramatic, and it's clearly not something that I think SAP is happy about. Oracle has some reason to crow about it, but I've also pointed out, Bonnie, each of those companies, Workday and Oracle and SAP, they've each got more than 400,000 customers. So I think it's inevitable that at different times there's going to be an ebb and flow across them. And also, I think, Bonnie, the bigger point, the intramural competition between Oracle and SAP can be fun. But the big thing here, and I think what you're really getting at with this research that you and Raven Intel have put together is that, in the whole cloud wars thing, the big winners are the customers because they're getting the fruits of this phenomenal competition. Then you add in a company like Workday, and Salesforce is going to know that it has to get better and better. Microsoft trying to come into the marketplace here, and a lot of smaller companies. So this is great to see. I think the way you then have been able to break down, it's not just one overall lump grade, but rather you've looked at a few different slices of how these projects roll out and how the customers felt about those.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And, as you mentioned, Bob, all of these organizations, or the software vendors that we're talking about, they have tons of clients, 400,000 customers. And the fact that they're trading customers back and forth, so many of these big customers use different aspects of Oracle, different aspects of SAP. So if I'm a Fortune 100 account, I probably have both of those systems in place. And so there's a lot of nuances in there when you say, oh, we won this massive, very well-known household name brand. That's great. You've won it for a certain, set of software. It doesn't mean that, you're doing every single thing for them though. And your competitor might be doing other aspects. So it's a little misleading to say 400,000. It doesn't mean that the other guys don't have, 100,000 on the same customers as well.
Yep. So Bonnie, over to you here. Tell us
Yes.
about how the numbers rolled out and, the categories, sort of the parts of the implementation that the customers were asked to evaluate these vendors on.
Mm-hmm. So first and foremost, we asked the customer, how long did this project take? In general, we're looking at approximately 18 months from contract signing for a customer to get live. Many cases it's longer than that, some cases it's less than that, but the average project duration time is about 18 months. And there's not a big difference between all three. So when I hear, and I've read some of your stuff about, there was one of these software vendors that said, oh, well, we implement so much faster than the other guys. I'm not seeing evidence that there's a single one of these that is so much more rapid than the others. And in general, it's about 18 and a half months. We ask first and foremost about the satisfaction with the project itself, and then we ask about the satisfaction with the software. So in terms of the satisfaction for partner and project, in general, it's about, our average rating out of 10 possible points is about, 7.2. For this particular one, while they're very close, the winner in the category for highest satisfaction for the project is actually SAP. Got like my little props here. So
that is outstanding.
So on average, SAP is rated 8.2 out of 10, a possible 10. Oracle 7.7 out of 10, Workday 7.38 out of 10. And again, these are averages, swags. These are implementations over the past 24 months. So in the area of partner and project, SAP has the slight lead in there. In terms,
Hey,
oh,
Bonnie,
sorry.
can I ask, um, because you said that out of the approximately 1,000 customer reviews that Raven Intel has, you've pulled out for Oracle, SAP, and Workday a subset of about 400. Those numbers seem pretty impressive, up in the sevens and eights. How do those stack up sort of overall with what you see in general on software projects?
It's right about median. So
Okay.
in general, at satisfaction is in the sevens, in the lower sevens. So these are actually, higher than you might imagine, higher than we see across the industry for satisfaction, being in the high sevens for this area. Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, I'm interested or sort of intrigued also to hear that because the big companies, somebody could say, well, they should be able to do better. After all, they're big, they've got a lot of resources, but I would think then the small companies have to try to even work harder on that because, right, the big names are better known. They probably got a little bit more of an installed connection and relationship. So those are important. And Bonnie, I'm going to ask you to pause for a second. I want to check out a word from our sponsor, BMC. BMC wants to know, is your business on its A game? That's when systems are intelligent by learning from markets, where automation is paramount yet effortless, and when technology and people work as one in an enterprise. The A game is your business at its absolute best. BMC calls this the autonomous digital enterprise. Find out more at bmc.com/A game. All right, Bonnie. So SAP sort of took the crown there for high satisfaction for project overall and partners, but pretty close scores. That was good to hear. What else did you find?
So we also asked the question, what was the satisfaction with your software vendor? So how, what's your willingness to recommend your software vendor? And the winner in this category is actually Workday. And they scored a very impressive 8.4 out of 10. As compared to SAP 7.9 and Oracle 7.3. Again, and I want to reiterate, in none of these areas, is there a particular vendor that's so far and above everyone else. But in this category, Workday is the clear winner in terms of satisfaction with the vendor experience. Okay. In terms of who was voted most responsive during implementation. And that would be not only the software vendor, but also the partner that was in charge of leading that project as well. And the winner in this situation is our friends at Oracle. They scored out of a possible 5 stars, 4.3. As compared to SAP's at 4.2 and Workday at 3.9. So responsiveness, particularly in the last year, with the whole pandemic and all of that, has been a big thing, big indicator of satisfaction with a project. And Oracle had some really good feedback in those situations.
I just want to follow up quickly on that because in a recent interview that I did with Steve Miranda, the executive vice president for applications at Oracle, he said, with these changes that have gone on over the past year in every industry, but especially the software industry, he said, I could make the argument that we at Oracle, we used to be a software company and now we're a services company. So it's interesting in that context when you talked about, who won the award for being most responsive. And I would venture a guess that in the past, it might be hard to find, a few years ago, it might be hard to find, some customers who say, oh yeah, we thought Oracle was very responsive. But here, currently in these new cloud things, they scored highest for responsiveness. So very, very interesting to see the evolution and development of each of these 3 different companies.
And it's not only Oracle themselves, but the partners as well. And how are they, enabling the partners to be responsive? How are they managing their partner ecosystem to ensure that happens? clearly it is.
Okay. All right. Um, Bonnie, what else did you have for us? Because those are all pretty interesting numbers.
And those are really, as it relates to sentiment, right? Of people's opinions or feelings. We also ask about the implementation, some very, sort of discrete sort of metrics. You know, two ones in particular are, did your project come in on time and did it come in on budget? I will tell you in general, no matter what software you're using, whether these three or, all of the other enterprise softwares that we rate, customers have about a 6 in 10 likelihood of an on-time delivery. It's not always a terrible thing, because a lot of times the customer ends up changing the scope of the project and it's no fault of the software vendor, the SI. But 6 out of 10 times you can 60% of the time you're expected to have on-time delivery. Of these three, the winner in this category is actually SAP.
Okay.
And they come in at 66% on-time delivery versus Workday at 63, versus Oracle at 53%.
Okay.
And so that's in terms of on-time delivery. Very hand in hand with that is on-budget delivery. As a rule of thumb, here again, customers should figure about 1.5 times what the proposed amount is for implementation. So they need to tack on, 1.5 times, or take times 1.x what they think it's going to cost, and that probably is pretty accurate in terms of what it will cost. Not all the time, but as a rule of thumb, that's what we see on our reviews. And here again, on time, on budget sort of go hand in hand. The winner in this case is SAP again, at 66% versus Oracle at 57% versus Workday at 56%. So
Okay.
a little bit of a drop there for Workday in terms of on budget delivery. So those are the delivery scores area. We also ask about the number of change orders within a project. And the main thing that we're looking for there is how much of the time is there a project that is underbid based on the fact that they had control, or the SI or the software vendor had control and knew what was happening, but it was underbid, and there were change orders that were not expected. And as a key takeaway here again, change orders happen about 20% of the time as a result of something being underscoped, versus I'm the customer, I changed the scope of the project, it was our fault that we didn't bring this up during the discovery process. And so that's what we're looking to isolate there. And I would say all three of the vendors here are fairly neck and neck in terms of change orders. And SAP came in 17%, Oracle 22%, Workday 26%. So very similar sort of swags in here in terms of the scoping accuracy.
Funny, with those two metrics in particular about on time and on budget, I thought it was fascinating. A few episodes ago, you described how it is entirely possible for a company to have a very successful project, even if it comes in either over budget or not right on schedule. That doesn't mean that the project itself overall wasn't successful. Could you just touch on that a little, please?
Without a doubt. And, there's a reason that projects go beyond what the expected time and cost was. And many times that is because, the organization didn't know about things they didn't know. They didn't plan for the pandemic happening last year, or they didn't see an internal organizational change that happened mid-project that they had to allow for, that all of a sudden caused their time, to increase by 3 or 6 months or something like that. And, in those sort of cases, customers don't, hold that or, ding the overall satisfaction of a project as a result of those type of things. Where you do see a correlation between my project was over time and over budget is when they feel that the either the software vendor or the SI came in and wanted to competitively underbid a project to win it, and then sort of do this like land and expand, type of revenue change, or cost change, and that's when customers get really grumpy.
Yeah, gee, who wouldn't like that sort of experience?
That's right. Yes,
We
it
all like
happens
to get,
though.
yeah.
Another thing that we hear from customers that really erodes at overall satisfaction with the project is when the team changes mid-project. I think the key takeaway here is if you're like the majority of customers, your team is going to change during the course of the project. With these projects being 18 months, sometimes more, just sort of a fact of life. People move on, they change roles, they get pulled into other projects. On the other hand, if you can keep your team consistent, that really, bodes well for the overall project cohesion. And so I think all three vendors struggle with this area. SAP about 50% of the time has a team change. Workday has approximately 62% of the time has a team change, and Oracle close to 70% of the time has a team change. So in this area I couldn't say that there's a clear winner. Just know that that's one of the things that will happen is that there are inevitably going to be personnel changes, and you want to find an SI who has a good track record of not having a lot of change during the course of a project.
Yeah. It sounds like one of those situations like in grade school where I'd get sent to the principal's office, Bonnie, and the principal was telling me, well, you have to understand this. I'd say, well, sister, you have to see it from my point of view. I don't think she was really ever interested in seeing it from my point of view. So we can always have excuses, but I don't think that means they're legitimate. Wow. So Bonnie, those are some interesting numbers. And then it looks like you have, a couple of big roll up details to share with as well.
Yeah, and this is last in the area of overall sentiment. So we ask the customers to rate how how was the implementation process overall? What was the quality of consultants? What was the flexibility and system expertise that your SI had in here? I will say the good news in really all three of these vendors is that they're in the high 3s and 4s out of a possible 5. And each one sort of alternates in terms of where they're strongest. So in terms of implementation process, in here, Oracle and SAP are pretty much neck and neck for the overall ratings in this area. SAP slightly higher, 4.1, Oracle 3.9, Workday at 3.8. In terms of quality of consultants, Oracle in here rating a 4.1 versus SAP 4.2, Workday 3.8. Flexibility, SAP rating at 4.3 versus Oracle 4.2, Workday 3.9. And then systems expertise, and then this really goes to the SIs responsible for the project itself. Both SAP and Oracle coming in at 4.2 and Workday at 4 solid. So what I think is important to note with all of these areas is that there's so many nuances and differences by SI. So you'll have some SIs that are rated really highly in these areas, which are pumping those numbers up, others that are not rated as well. The importance here is just to do a very independent and objective sort of look about what are their customers saying in these areas about the SI. And all three vendors, have excellent SIs. They have sort of mid-range, and they have ones that you shouldn't do business with. And so you just want to make sure that you're looking for partners who are highest rated in these areas.
And Bonnie, those ratings are available at your site?
They are. They are. And you can go out and search for partners on all three, Workday, Oracle, and SAP, out on our site, as well as other software vendors as well.
So, Bonnie, having compiled these, fascinating numbers here, what counsel or advice would you share with the software companies?
Mhm. I think it's important to take an independent look at the success that your partner ecosystem is having. All three of these vendors are doing their own internal analysis on, how good are my SIs. I think it makes a ton of sense to look outside and to have someone else, and particularly your customers, independently rating the quality of these SIs, because they change over time. The reason I started Raven was to help software organizations do that and really get this independent bird's eye view on who are their best partners, who they need to really retrain, or those that they probably should call out of their partner ecosystem. The success of implementation is directly correlated back to how long is a customer going to stay with you, and how much more software they're going to buy. So it behooves a software vendor to have excellent partners doing the implementations and providing services for clients, because it's a reflection of them. And to make sure that you're constantly monitoring the success of partners, not just how much are they helping you sell, but how much are they helping you retain and sell additional business as well. And that's all tied in with how satisfied is my customer. I think it's really important to to know what's going on and get, again, that bird's eye view of your partner ecosystem, and have that independent look.
Yeah, especially Bonnie, since so many, well, all of those companies, they've all begun putting so much emphasis on not just the upfront sale, which is a start, but more the customer success. Did the project get completed? Is the customer happy? Will the customer be predisposed toward coming back to you next time?
Absolutely. Did the customer get the value that they felt out of the project that they thought, going in? Those are all questions that we ask. And that really, is going to, how should I say, impact the likelihood of them being a customer for the future and buying additional licenses as well.
Yep. This is this has been really, really interesting. So intriguing to see in these different specific areas which company did particularly well, and also sort of points the ground for each of those companies to understand where they need to do some improvement. And you've shared so many interesting numbers with everybody today. Just to be sure to recap, could you go back and show where each of the three companies, took the crown in each of those three key areas?
Absolutely. So for overall satisfaction for both partner and project, the winner in this category is SAP, coming in at 8.2 out of 10. So really good and solid satisfaction for implementation. The highest satisfaction for software vendor and software experience is Workday, coming in at a very strong 8.4 out of possible 10 points. And the organization voted most responsive during implementation is Oracle, rated out of a possible 5 stars of 4.3 stars. Particularly of importance last year was this area of responsiveness and flexibility, and Oracle really had a lead in this category.
Okay. Well, that's great, Bonnie. That's a wonderful summary and a good reminder of the good things each company is doing, and also a reminder of some areas where each has to continue to improve.
Absolutely. Implementation is so critical to get right, because that is going to lead to overall a positive experience and the long-term success of a customer.
all three did well in certain areas, and as is always the case, that there's room for improvement across the board. And hope they'll take you up on the idea about checking out some independent reviews and independent voices to give them the feedback that's so vital toward driving toward those higher levels of customer success that are so much the key to doing well in the market these days.
Absolutely.
Well, Bonnie, thank you so much. Any final thoughts before we close out here after you're sharing some, really, really interesting ideas here?
Well, I have my new quote of the month on my board here. So time is non-refundable, choose wisely. So that's my word of the month.
Why didn't you share that with me, when I was a kid? I think I squandered some of my time resources. Oh, well. Oh, well. Good to learn now. It's always a good lesson to have.
That's right. That's right.
Well, Bonnie, thanks a million. It's always great to have you. You bring such intriguing and valuable insights to it. Really, really great stuff today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And folks, thanks to all of you for being with us here at Cloud Wars Live. We hope you'll come back and see us again soon. As we are recording this, winter is almost over, just a few more days. Spring's around the corner, so good things happening for everybody. We look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.